All right, so tonight we're talking about why was Hitler able to rise to power in Germany. We already started talking about this in class because we were reading the Nazi program. So the first question is, why did the Nazi Party gain such massive popular support? And some of this you know already because we were talking about this in class. The economic and psychological impact of the Depression made these extremist ideas a lot more appealing. Like I also said, the fact that Germany had a multi-party state, which made it easier for a party like the Nazis to gain, some seats in the Reichstag also was really important. Now, the Nazi Party also used different tactics to appeal to different groups. If they were talking to a crowd of working class people, they attacked big business and high finance. If they were talking to the middle class, they exploited the fears of a communist revolution. Also, Hitler was, we'll talk in a second, was a master propagandist, and the way he used to be able to speak to a crowd was also really important. So Hitler had mass support and had the people believing that he could prevent a communist takeover. Now, fascism, which is what Nazism is the opposite of communism. So a lot of people, especially business owners, middle class, were really, really scared of the idea of a communist revolution coming to Germany, especially after it happened in Russia. So that was a real fear. And plus, there was communist parties in every single country in Europe. If you look at that chart that we were going over in class today, and we were talking about how the Nazi Party at the most points had 37.3% of the vote. You'll also notice that listed amongst those parties was the Communist Party in Germany, and they also had about 15% of the vote. And there was a Communist Party in, like I said, in every single country in Europe. The other thing that they were able to do, why the Nazis were able to gain popular support, is they made it into, and this was one thing that Hitler really did, is they made it into a mass movement. And I'll show you some pictures about that in a second. But they also appealed to the national pride of the German people and their opposition to the Treaty of Versailles. So the Nazi Party was really good at hammering home how the Treaty of Versailles had been this thing that harmed the German people, and since it was the German government that had signed the Treaty of Versailles, even though they really didn't have any option not to, they were the source of Germany's humiliation, and really kind of blamed the German people for, blamed the German government for accepting the Treaty of Versailles. So the second question is, how did Hitler help the Nazi Party become so powerful? So by 1921, Hitler was the head of the Nazi Party, which is the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party. He really helped to develop the party into a mass political movement. So you'll notice in this picture, they had flags and badges and uniforms. They had their own newspaper. They had their own police force that was referred to as the stormtroopers or the SA. And the membership really began to grow. It was organized on a regional basis. And in 1925, you had about 27,000 members of the Nazi Party. By 1929, that number had grown to 178,000 members. But by 1932, there was 800,000 members of the Nazi Party. Most of the leaders of the organization were between 25 to 30 years old. And that's also really significant because a lot of these young, and it's mostly men, a lot of these young men felt very disillusioned, especially with the Great Depression. They weren't able to get jobs. They didn't really have a sense of purpose or belonging, and the Nazi Party gave that to them. It gave them an active participation in government. It gave them a sense of purpose. It gave them a sense of belonging. Hitler also and the Nazis really kind of emphasized traditional German values. Remember, I was talking in class yesterday about today, or whenever, about how they really emphasized the idea of the traditional family and the mother staying at home, and how in the Nazi program there was different incentives that were made, financial incentives to make it easier for the mother to stay at home and the husband to work. So they really kind of emphasized the idea of the traditional German family. Hitler was also like a master at propaganda. He had a gift for public speaking. Every single one of his speeches was incredibly well rehearsed and planned out. He was really good. If you look at this picture here, he was really good at kind of like setting up or having people around him that knew how to set up a good photo. Because if you look at this picture, you see, Hitler looking down at this cherubic little boy in his traditional little lederhosen, the little blonde-haired German boy looking up at Hitler with this sense of wonder in his eyes, and him being, Hitler very gently shaking his hand, and the mother, looking on very fondly. This sends, a really impressive message. The Nazis were really good at planning these mass rallies. where Hitler would arrive in the car and people are trying to shake his hand and they want to, touch him and kind of be a part, be with him. Also, if you look at this picture, him kind of crowding around this table of young men, and they're all kind of like, very eager to hear him talk with like this like attention on their face, like they can't believe who they're speaking to, and they're all kind of crowding around to kind of speak to him. So they were the Nazis were a really strong master at this political message. So the question here is, how was Hitler able to seize power in Germany? So remember I said the most they ever got was 37.3% of the vote. But with that percentage, they had what's called a plurality. They were the party with the most votes, most single votes, even though they didn't have a majority. And so in 1932, in that election in July of 1932, they had the largest share of seats in the Reichstag. And the president of Germany at the time was a man by the name of President Hindenburg. And Hindenburg did not particularly trust Hitler or like Hitler, but Hindenburg was having a really rough time trying to control the country at this point. He really was just ruling by decree because, he couldn't get the Reichstag to cooperate. He didn't trust Hitler, he didn't trust the Nazis, but he decides to appoint him chancellor in 1933, and kind of the attitude was kind of like he didn't quite trust Hitler, but he figured if he brought Hitler into the government, he'd be able to watch over Hitler a little bit better. So in February of 27th of 1933, the Reichstag, which was the Capitol building of not the Capitol building, so it'd be like the Congress, like the legislature. So for us, it would be like your Congress. So the Reichstag, and for some reason, my pen is not working, so I can't write, but Reichstag is spelled Reichstag. So February 27, 1933, the Reichstag was set on fire. It wasn't clear who set it. A Dutch communist was blamed. So that kind of tipped off like a little bit of a panic through the German government, because it was this fear that this was an attempt at a communist takeover. A lot of historians think that it was actually a fire that was set by the Nazi Party itself, because it kind of played into their goals. But as a result of this, Hitler, as chancellor, is given emergency powers. So once he has emergency powers, on March 23rd, 1933, he passes something called the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act, and this law was passed with a 2/3 vote in the Reichstag, because there was this panic that, communism was going to come and take over Germany. It gave the government the power to get rid of the Constitution for 4 years. And now once Hitler had that power, he wasn't going to give that power up. So essentially Hitler was legally made dictator of the German people. And so we'll talk about in class. We're going to continue reading some more of those documents that we're reading in class, and we'll see how he kind of played up the anger and angst that people had over the Treaty of Versailles. So I want you to think about this question, which is, why was Hitler able to legally be made dictator in 1933?